Goa lang supurle pun kitle tu sundo tu kane toila Goa
Jambo, jambo bwana, habari gani? Nzuri sana, wageni wakaribishwa Kenya yetu.
Good evening, everybody. And welcome to the Goan Cultural Group, our small little club up here. Well, it's a great privilege today to introduce to you Maria Lynch, who's the author of the book Beneath the African Sun. Maria, now, please come up, Maria.
Thank you, Joyce, for the introduction. I do want to start off by acknowledging Tim DeMello. He invited me to come and speak to your group at this meeting to talk about my book, Beneath the African Sun. Talk about the cover of the book, and then we will peek inside the novel and see what is inside there. So she sent me a couple of illustrations, and I didn't quite like them, so I decided to send her 2 photographs from a recent trip we did in Kenya. One was the Gong Hills, which was taken from Karen Blixen's Tropics. The title of the book is done in cross-stitch. The chapters, the numbered chapters are all done in cross-stitch. Then she did a simple stitch around here, all around the edging. I was so impressed at the thoughtfulness of this book designer who put in the tailoring aspect on my book. This has such lovely memories, and it's a treasure to me. So that was the story of the book design. And now let's go into what's inside here.
Okay, this excerpt is from chapter 10. The title is New Adjustment in Nairobi. I now have a wife to share my life in Nairobi. On Sunday, on our way to church, I took Trinia to my shop. We stopped on the street. I proudly pointed out my sign, S. Mendes Limited Tailoring Establishment. Then I took her hand and we walked across the street. I unlocked the door, stepped back, and held her hands as we entered the shop together. I could feel her pulse racing when we stepped inside. She let go of my hand and slowly walked through the shop. She smiled at me and stopped near the desk. You own this? I own everything inside. I pay the rent for the shop. What do you think? It's nothing like I imagined. I don't remember seeing anything like this where we lived in Goa. Maybe there are shops like this in Panjim. You know, I always wanted to visit Panjim. Yes, probably in Panjim. But in Margaon, there are shops like this. Remember, I trained in Margaon. Maybe when we go next to Goa, we can take a trip to Panjim. Yes, she said. Next time we go back. I'm not sure Panjim compares to Nairobi. You'll see. This is a big city, bigger than Panjim. The British do things differently from the Portuguese. You'll see. Trinia cuddled up to me. I locked the shop and we walked. It's getting late. Let's go to bed. We can talk some more tomorrow about this and the days after. I have my own opinions, which I will share with you as the days go by. As she stood up, a question occurred to her. Do you have any European customers? At first, I didn't. But yes, now I do. They add to the success of the shop each year. When it comes to serving their needs, they will come to our shops. My European customers appear to be kind and accepting, but I'm never sure. I don't ask many questions. It is business. Come, let's go to bed. It's getting late, and I have a busy day tomorrow, said. My first day back after our lovely time in Goa.
Thank you. Thank you, Juliet. That was very good. Okay, we're going to start off with the questions. And I'm going to read a question from Tim. Okay, this question. Sabi seemed to be a very gentle person who seemed to recognize the injustices of Kenyan society almost immediately. The separation of whites from Asians and Africans, and the injustices perpetrated on the Africans by the British. He was also very gentle in his own personal relationships with his friends, his wife, and his children. Like he was almost perfect and flawless. He didn't seem to have any vices. He shunned gambling, and he drank very moderately, and only smoked a pipe at night. Why did you choose to portray him this way?
That's a very good question, and what I did through all of my readings, I'm an avid reader, so I thought, and I read different stories, and I wanted to create a gentle person, someone that you don't always read about. So he was the protagonist getting it from the antagonist, and so I portrayed him in that manner. He was a combination of different people that I remembered and friends of my father, etc. So I purposely did that, just wanted to.
This question is from Rose D'Souza. Maria, your book Beneath the African Sun reads more like memories than fiction. I noticed you dedicated this book to your father, Mr. C.P. Johannes. Was he the founder and head of the Nairobi Tailor Society? And did you base the main character Sabi on him?
No, I cannot remember if he was the founder, because remember, I was the youngest child, and I know he was involved with the Tailor Society in Nairobi, so I cannot remember that aspect. So what was the other part?
Did you base Sabi on your father?
Well, not totally. What I did when I was doing my research, I interviewed family members, I interviewed some of the children of his friends, and we talked about it, and I have a whole bunch of notes. So when I was developing this character, Sabi, I would refer to my notes, and the amazing thing was when I would question about a certain historical event in Kenya to these people, or a particular social event among the Goans, I'd ask the very same question, and each of these people would have a different memory. So when I had my research notes and I had this character figured out, I reached out to the different notes and said, okay, this sounds like the Sabi I'm creating. And so I would take that bit of research and frame it, embellish it into the novel. And even though the novel is based on experiences and from research done, I wanted to bring out the social justice issues, and that's the way I was able to portray it through this person who, as Tim said, was this gentle soul. I wanted him questioning everyone, but really strapped because he could not fight the colonial government.
The Goan tailors in Kenya were a very skilled lot of people. They excelled in their skills and were sought after by some of the best outfitters. People from Kenya remember Ahmed Brothers, and who outfitted film stars. Jomo Kenyatta, the first president of Kenya, had his suit stitched by a Goan tailor in Nairobi. So did Julius Nyerere, president of Tanzania. When any Goan wanted a suit made, they invariably used a Goan tailor. In spite of all this, the Goan tailor was considered to be in the low strata of Goan society. Even an unskilled, lowly paid clerk in the railways of government service enjoyed a better status. Why do you think this happened? Was it the lack of the English language? Lack of the English language could not be the real reason, because a lot of Indians became very successful with practically no knowledge of English.
That is a very difficult question to answer. Why were the tailors considered the lower strata? When I met my... Sorry?
Put it out to the...
Well, I'll just give you a bit of my experience. When I went to England, the first thing I would say, because this is a hang-up all of us tailors' children had. You're a tailor's daughter or you're a tailor's son, and we don't want to have anything to do with you. And that was, you all know that was very obvious. So that when I went to England with this hang-up on me, I had two hang-ups. I lost my mother when I was 8 years old, and then the tailor's situation. So when I would go, and when you are in a strange country, people want to know where you're from, what's your background, and all that kind of thing. I was 18 years old, and I knew no going around. I felt so free, and I said, well, you know, this is my background, and my father was a tailor. Oh, really? My goodness. And I said, oh, you don't think that's bad? No, what are you talking about? And did he have his own... I said, yes, he ran his own business. My God, look at Savile Row here in London. They were talking about the famous tailors. And yes, you're right, Ahmed Brothers. They were more aggressive. They were the competitors that my dad always considered. So I have no idea why the Goans considered someone like my father, who was an entrepreneur and loved the work he did. I mean, he just couldn't imagine doing anything else. You know, but the fact... Talk about or discuss.
2 years ago, when you were in Goa, no, you were in Kenya. But I'm saying, now, is it the same? You know, the caste system or the tailor system. Do they still have that? You know, like your daughter can't marry because father's a tailor. Is that still going on?
I'm not sure that by the time, I would say, for instance, I had brothers and sisters that were born in 1932, right up to when I was born in 1948. So we were a family of 8 kids. So the older brothers and sisters were definitely bullied. They were beaten. They were told, you do not belong here in this school. And in our home, we discussed that. We talked about that. So that was difficult. So I don't know, as a young kid, listening to this conversation, I was very careful how I moved around with people. I remember going back to Kenya for a short while. And another dear friend of mine, who shall name nameless, was still in Kenya, a Goan friend, and she said, oh, you've got to come out, we'll take you to this club. It's a club, I can't even remember the name, in Nairobi. And she said, it'll be a blind date, there'll be a young fellow there, he's a Goan guy. And I said, oh, okay. So we went to the club, and, there were no sparks flying between me and him, so that was fine. It was a lovely night, and she arranged this night for us on my way back on my return from London. When I got home, my elder brother, was sitting there, and I don't know how he knew who this fellow was, and he said, that's not going to go anywhere. He's a Brahmin. I looked at my brother and I said, now this would have been 69, after I graduated. I went back because my dad was not well at all. I looked at him and I said, don't worry, there weren't any sparks.
Since we have been talking about the Santa Cruz Club. I think maybe it'll be a good time to introduce Tim's third question here. Tim says the Goan tailors in East Africa, right from the earliest emigration to Zanzibar and then into Tanganyika, Kenya, and then Uganda, seem to be very socially conscious. This is well documented in books on East Africa. I know from the Kenya experience that they looked after the poorer sections of our community and were very active in the St. Vincent de Paul Society. In 1959, they even built a hostel in Mombasa for Goans, and I'm sure many of us have used that when we were visiting Mombasa. Tim says, I stayed there once and the rooms were very clean and very affordable. Why and how did the Goan tailors have this sense of social consciousness which seemed to be missing from most other sections of our community?
I can recall my dad actually, because he used to hire a lot of the Goan tailors that would come, or even if they didn't have tailoring skills, he would help them and give them the basic jobs to do to help him when he was busy. And so one of the things I remember so well growing up was there was one particular tailor who could not be relied upon, even though, and he lived down the street, and there was a rooming house at the corner of our street, and he lived in that rooming house, and there were about 5 kids, little kids. And I remember he would say, oh, he cannot come to work, and obviously there was a mental issue there, but we never talked about that. So I remember every Sunday he would ask us to, and each of us children had turns to take a dish or a couple of dishes of food to them, because he knew that the fellow had no source of income. So that I know we did regularly. I don't know where it came from, but yes, they're very active in the St. Vincent de Paul Society. Giving or sharing, is it when you're so low down in your community, you just say, okay, let us help those who are worse off than we are? That could be one of the issues. But I remember lots of good works that Dad did while especially when his business was very successful. There were times when they weren't. And in fact, as a family, we used to critique him so much because he would always say, he would never fight back, and he would say, well, their day will come. And I think in this day and age in Canada, we say what goes around comes around. My dad making suits for little boys from remnants of a suit length that was left, and he said, oh, go and take this to that family, they would love this suit. It was a little boy's birthday, so he would just and I don't know where it came from, and we just thought it was part of life, and we just did that.
I have another question from Rose. All right. Rose says, I have purchased books in similar storylines and struggle, often unable to complete them. But with this book, both the subject matter and your writing style was so engaging, I completed it in less than a week. Sometimes reading late into the night as I could not put it down. I'm looking forward to your next book. Have you picked a subject? And will it follow Sabi's children?
I really thank Rose for that comment, and it's a familiar comment I get from my friends who are not Goans, who immediately bought the book, and that was the first thing they said to me. They couldn't put it down, so I said, yeah, I achieved my objective. Yes, I am doing a sequel to this book. It's only going to be a sequel. It'll be set in Canada. I'm going to make it a truly Canadian novel. I'm already working on the outline. I approached a few people on it, so it's coming. Yes.
Wonderful.
Well, I see there are no more questions. Well, thank you, Maria, for sharing with us the story of Sabi. Those of us who lived in Kenya can identify with Sabi as he struggled with the realities of segregation and, more painfully, the closed mentality of the Goan community. Sabi's struggles have also been our own struggles, as we have made those difficult decisions to emigrate to Canada and adapt to Canadian society. But hopefully those experiences have made us better and more resilient as a people. Thank you.
Tim, for inviting me, and thank you for the Goan Cultural Group for having me here at your meeting. Thank you.
Tutaibana weye mama, tutatogase wote mama, mwango yako mzuri mama, macho yako vizuri mama,